That's when they had locked horns. Well, a similar locking of horns is happening in Parliament now as the minority and the majority. They don't go grieve for anybody. Speaker of Parliament says, leader of government business, go and sit down. We are not ready for you. We are campaigning. When we finish, we'll come to you. The minority opposes the Parliament recall. It says, Mr. Speaker, we wish to submit that based on the petitioner's own request, you are not obliged to recall Parliament. Further, the petitioner has not demonstrated that there is any emergency nor urgent government business to warrant a recall of Parliament. Barely 11 remaining days. It's now 9 days to the crucial 2024 general elections. That's the case to forcing there. He goes on to say, we note further that the petitioner has not satisfied the threshold and requirement under Article 1123 of the 1992 Constitution and Order 531 of the Standing Orders, which require signatures of 15% of members of Parliament to trigger a recall of Parliament. It says, as we speak, members of Parliament from both sides are in their constituencies having critical engagement with the electorate ahead of the December 7 election. This election is not only a destiny-defining election for Ghana, but a career-defining one for many members of Parliament. So being an MP is a career now these days. The petitioner proposed Thursday, the 28th of November and Friday, the 29th of November 2024 as the date for his ill-fated and ill-timed recall. Should this request be granted, not only will members of Parliament be required to truncate their important engagement with the electorate, but members will have to contend with logistical and other challenges to commute over long distances, difficult and hard-to-reach constituencies to Accra. With barely 11 days to the elections, a recall of the House at this time will only fuel the unresolved stalemate that has prevailed in recent time. We must avoid anything that has the potential to disturb the peace of our country and stability of our democracy. Rather, let us prioritize the conduct of credible, peaceful, free and fair elections at this stage. I therefore suggest a leadership meeting after the elections to resolve the stalemate and to agree on a suitable date to recall the House to consider any outstanding government business. That's Kesala to forcing. He leads the NDC side in Parliament. Well, what has the MPP been saying? The Alexander Penyomake leads that side. He insists that he is majority leader. The MPP's demand for a recall include a request for tax exemptions for designated beneficiaries under the One District, One Factory program. There's also the Ghana Financial Stability Fund, an International Development Association facility of $250 million US. That's some conversation that's happening around there, and they're asking for it on the floor of Parliament. There's also a consideration of the President's nominations for appointment as Justices of the Supreme Court, also ratification of mining lease agreements between Ghana and the Ashanti Bauxite Company Limited for the mining of bauxite in the Nyinehini Block 2 area in the Echima Mponia district of the Ashanti region. Also, in addition to the demand for the recall from the side of the majority, ratification of the mining lease agreement between Ghana and Barari DV Ghana Limited for the exploitation of lithium at Soyam in the central region. Also bills including the Environmental Protection Agency Bill 2024, Social Protection Bill 2023. Well, interesting, isn't it? So this EPA bill is what is actually going to stop the illegal mining and in response to the call by organized labor, etc. But this is the standing order that was quoted by the Dr. Kesala Tuforcing, Order 53.1 and 2 of Parliament Standing Orders. Helen, have you been in Parliament before?
No, I haven't.
You haven't? Do as the honor say.
All right, so this is Order 53.1 and 2, Parliament Standing Orders, meeting by request of Article 1123 of the Constitution. Despite any other provision, 15% of members of Parliament may request a meeting of Parliament, and the Speaker shall, within 7 days after the receipt of the request, summon Parliament. 2, Parliament shall reconvene. Can we go back one step? Parliament shall reconvene with 7 days after the issuance of the notice of summons. And notwithstanding any other provision of this article, 15% of members of Parliament may request a meeting of Parliament, and the Speaker shall, within 7 days after the receipt of the request, summon Parliament. Okay. We've flitted in between three. The Speaker may summon a sitting of the House before the date or time to which the House has been adjourned, or at any date or time after the House has been adjourned sine die. The Speaker shall summon Parliament within a period determined by the Speaker, and the requirement for a 14-day notice shall not apply where there is an emergency.
So these are the standing orders based on which the minority, or if you like, Dr. Kesela Tuforsin of the NDC and his team are saying that, Mr. Speaker, consider these and the provisions in the 1992 Constitution and do not recall now. I mean, do they really have a legitimate claim when they say that, look, we are prosecuting our campaign, bringing us back will put a logistical and financial burden on us, and what it means is that you may truncate somebody's desire to get back into Parliament, either by career or, by their political longevity in Parliament.
That's right.
Do they have a legitimate claim and a call?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the Speaker responds accordingly. Interestingly, the Daily Guide says this morning, Bagbin puts Parliament in cooler. And they reiterate they reiterate on page 3 exactly what the Speaker said. And he says, Honourable Leader, as you may be aware, the performance of the functions of Parliament and the duties of members of Parliament extends beyond the plenary sittings of Parliament. Again, as you are aware, the parliamentary calendar acknowledges election campaign periods. He says that is the tradition. And as you've mentioned, for some MPs, it's the fight of their life. So to request that they come from far and wide is quite difficult. He goes on to say this season is for the government, parties, and both presidential and parliamentary candidates to present their manifestos to the people and to account and justify how the mandates given them by the voters for the 4-year term of office has been applied to the benefit of the people.
I see.
He goes on to also say, bearing in mind the provisions of Article 296A and B of the Constitution and the closeness of your proposed dates to the general election, I am of the considered opinion that it would not be in the national interest to interrupt the campaigns of members and parties by a recall to plenary sitting of Parliament.
Okay. Well, it's not done yet. The Speaker had more to say.
He did indeed. Consequently, he says, it will not be fair to exercise my discretion in favor of your request to summon members of Parliament at this time to a 2-day sitting to deliberate on 22 items you consider urgent or outstanding government business.
And this is Speaker. Okay.
He had a lot to say, Johnny. He also says, it is worth noting that having regard to the practice and deliberations of the House, I wonder how the proposed 22 items could be transacted in just 2 days. It is, okay, there it goes, in just 2 days.
Okay.
Accordingly, I accordingly suggest that government prioritizes these businesses together with others not captured by your memo for consideration after the conduct of the general elections on the 7th of December 2024. The House will resume sitting after the elections to complete all essential matters before a seamless transition to the 9th Parliament of the 4th Republic of Ghana.
Interesting there. Well, that's the Speaker of Parliament, and you know that they've locked horns in Parliament, minority, majority, and the Speaker of Parliament says, well, I have the right to call back, but I think that we must finish the elections first before we go to it. Dr. Rashid Draman is joining us. He's Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Doc, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, Johnny.
The Speaker of Parliament has spoken. He's turned down the request of the leader of the NPP side in Parliament after Kesela Tuforsin, the leader of the NDC side in Parliament, gave good reason per the Constitution and standing orders that they cannot return because it's too close for comfort. What do you say?
Well, I say that is what it is. I mean, Parliament has dragged itself to this kind of difficulty mostly by the fact that, they sought to resolve what seemed to be a political problem by using legal tools and by inviting the court into their space. And in that process, I believe, incurring the displeasure of the Right Honorable Speaker, because if you remember his media encounter, he was of the view that there was some connivance between the executive and the judiciary to weaken Parliament. And now, having used those legal tools, at the tail end of it, we see a very reconciliatory kind of tone from the MPP side. I mean, as framed in the memo sent by Honorable Alexander Afenyo-Markin,
right.
the Right Honorable Speaker, appealing his discretion and at least appealing to the national interest, appealing to the peace of our country, which I believe is very good. But that should have been what should have come from him on the first day of this crisis, so that the two sides, maybe together with the Speaker, would have sat down and tried to maybe find a way out of this crisis. But we started with legal tools, and the outcome was predictable.
The best in the morning is on 92.7 Sunrise on
ordinarily, Johnny, even
yes, sir.
I mean, if it was just one day for all these number of businesses, we have seen some of that happen in the past when Parliament has come together, master of its own rules, and try to maybe look at how they can conduct some of these businesses. I mean, sometimes under the some of the businesses come under agency, or however they call it in Parliament, where some of their rules are suspended. I believe now that we are in the era of legalities, I mean, I'm sure that the NDC side, for instance, might not agree when some of these legal processes, constitutional provisions have to be overlooked, and so that the business of government can take place. So I think we are where we are. They've created a crisis for themselves as Parliament, as an institution, and we have to live with this up to the end of this Parliament, and I believe in many parliaments to come.
Now, this, some have said, will hurt government business. The longer we wait, the longer the problem lingers and the bigger it becomes. The conversation is that they should have a leadership meeting and solve this stalemate. Do you get a sense that Alexander Afenyo-Markin and his team will take that option, or they would rather go to the court and seek for a mandamus to get the Speaker to quickly recall Parliament if they so wish?
I believe maybe the second option of going to court. I don't think that is going to do anybody any good.
The best in the morning.
I think that maybe the first option of trying to, get some kind of reconciliation and come to some consensus, I think would be the wise thing to do, particularly in the interest of the peace of our country. Even if it is too late, I believe maybe this could save the country and future parliaments a lot of troubles. So I think the path to getting out of this is more reconciliation and not another court kind of proceeding.
Again, the question down comes, this is Parliament, the 8th. Is this the best way to wrap up the hard work done over the past 4 years?
Indeed, not the best. It started on a note of chaos.
The best in the morning
I think we all saw that. And I think it's very sad that it's ending on this note. Because, look, Johnny, no matter what happens, if after the elections, Parliament is recalled, and still this matter of who is majority, who is minority, is not resolved in this 8th Parliament. We are going to see this go down to a fight until the last hour. Up until today, both sides are calling themselves majority. And I've heard you describe the NDC group, MPP group, and I'm sure everybody is careful what to say.
Exactly.
And I know the Honorable Apinemakin has chastised some of you for calling him something that he believes he's not. So I see everybody being careful, because otherwise, why would we say NDC group, MPP group? We should say majority, minority. But that has still not been resolved. The court has resolved it, but the two sides are still calling themselves that way. So when you go into the chamber, for instance, after the elections, it's still going to be the same. Particularly, the election is going to produce an outcome that might not be pleasant to either side. So that is even going to deepen.
Right.
Because assuming the NDC MPP wins the election, and they still will be majority in the next Parliament, certainly NDC will be reeling from that defeat. And that anger, I believe, is going to contribute to even making things worse in the last days of the Parliament. On the other hand, if the NDC wins and forms the majority for the next Parliament, the MPP side is also going to be aggrieved. So really, I think we need a lot of cool heads. We need a lot of reconciliation to take place. But we have called for this, for the past month and a half. And nobody seems to have paid any attention, because I believe there was always a thinking that, things are going to resolve themselves. But no. I think knowing our country, knowing how excessively partisan our Parliament is, you leave the two sides, everybody is, digging in with their egos. So you leave them, they are not going to, by themselves, get this resolved.
Doc, I'll let you go, but before I let you go, I'm also looking at the executive. So far, we've not heard a whimper from the presidency in trying to lend a helping hand to solve this stalemate as we have it now, especially knowing that they will be the ones to be impacted heavily by this action in Parliament. Are you surprised?
Well, Johnny, I think, if you have spoken on your platform, at the beginning of this, saying that if there was anything that I would advise, it was the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary should stick together and try to find a way out. And like you rightly said, government business, who has the mandate now to conduct government business? I think it's the MPP. And His Excellency the President has every interest to make sure that he also finishes whatever he has promised to do. And if you need Parliament, I would have thought that really, from the Jubilee House, there would have been some kind of interventions. I don't know whether there has been and it failed.
Right.
But I doubt it, because from my sources in Parliament, I don't think there was anything like this. So really, it's quite not very pleasant that we didn't get maybe the executive trying to intervene. Separation of powers does not mean the absence of interdependence or working together to try and resolve the matters of state. So that is a gap,
right,
that we have witnessed in this during this crisis.
Dr. Rashid Rahman, I thank you very much indeed. He's the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. We're grateful as always.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. Helen, you had Doc. Going to court will not help. I'm wondering why the executive has not said anything really, because Afenyomakin's role in Parliament, aside being leader of the side, is also the leader of government business. And government business is what the executive wants transmitted from the presidency to Parliament.
That's right.
For consideration and then, if you will, approval, etc. All these 1D, 1F tax exemptions, if it goes through, will be inure to the benefit of the executive. I'm sure if we had that, they would have used that as part of the campaign. Why they aren't saying anything about all of what's happening is quite strange to me.
I don't think so. With 9 days to the general elections, I'm not too sure whether either side will be in that collaborative spirit, if you see what I mean, because as the campaign heats up, each side has something to say about why, Ghanaians shouldn't be buying into the agenda of the other side. At this point, I think it's become clear that until the elections are over, there will be no government business. You also hear from the NDC side, and their opinion is that all the items listed, 22 items, really pressing and or urgent. That's a question that has come up as well. Is it really urgent? And if so,
the minority side said it's not really urgent.
Yes. And the speaker also mentioned that with the number of items that are being presented, 2 days, that's the Thursday and the Friday, 28th, 29th, is simply not going to be enough, or would not have been enough to really get into these issues. And I agree, 22 items, 2 days. I mean, sometimes they sit through into the night, into dawn, but I'm not sure that they would be able to get through if it's really urgent and pressing and needs consideration. More time should be allocated to these decisions.
So the speaker specifically said it is worth noting that having regard to the practice and deliberations of the House, I wonder how the proposed 22 items could be transacted within 2 days. And you're right when you say that they don't have enough time, because then it will mean rushing through, and that will means not being able to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Indeed.
That means that we could be making a lot of mistakes, which will come back to bite us.
That's right.
Like we did in the... Look, a JAPA document is one of the documents that I always talk and think about. We hurriedly rushed through it. We passed it, only for Martin Amidu to do a corruption risk assessment to come and tell us that, you signed the thing based on a non-existent law. It made nonsense of everything we had done, all the monies and the speed and the push. And
look at the financial consequences when members of parliament don't take their time to actually go through what is before them.
In fact, we spent $12 million US just for transaction advice on the JAPA deal, which was signed off on a non-existent law from parliament to the presidency. A non-existent law, a JAPA deal. We did that. Charlie?
All the actions, it was clear that Mr. Speaker